Well, hello, Endow, ladies and friends. I am here with Liz Lev. Welcome, Liz. Welcome to the Endow podcast.
I am very excited to be here. I'm even more excited about our subject matter. I'm honored and thrilled to be able to talk about this.
Well, you have been on my interview wish list ever since the podcast began, I think 3 years ago. So I'm so happy that we got to meet back in October so that I could rope you in, Liz. Because I know you're very busy. So for those who don't know you, you are a art historian, originally from the United States, now living in Rome. You do all these amazing guided tours in Rome, talking about beauty and art, and that's what we're going to talk about today. In beauty, you're also a professor for Duquesne and also for the Angelicum, right?
Yes, I am. As a matter of fact, this is my week when my classes start up again. So I'm getting really excited about this podcast because this is the chance for me to get all pumped up for my students. I start tomorrow with University of Mary, next week with Duquesne University's Rome campus, and then I will follow up with my life at the Ange. And somewhere in there, it will all turn into a magnificent 3-ring circus of articles, lectures, tours, classes. And hopefully sometime in June, I'll still be standing.
Well, you'll laugh at this. Yesterday, you'll understand this because you're an American living in Rome. You know, the beauty wound, the Rome wound, that happened to me yesterday. And I thought, is this happening to me because I knew I was going to talk to you today? So I put on some cheesy, Netflix rom-com that takes place in Italy because I just had to hold myself over until I got to talk to you about true beauty. But it's real. And you're kind of living the dream. I mean, you're really cool. You teach art history. You live in Rome. You're a sommelier. I mean, come on, Liz.
I'm an art historian with a job, which makes me an endangered, rare hothouse flower that grew on the slopes of the most extraordinary circumstances imaginable. So yes, I'm very, very fortunate.
It's just awesome. And, I am a huge Benedict the 16th fan. And I think, you know more about him than I do, I'm sure. He was a beauty guy. He was, they say that everybody has one of the transcendentals that really kind of grabs them or is, where they're attracted and drawn to. It seems to me that for Pope Benedict, he was really drawn to beauty. And maybe that's because he was drawn to St. Augustine, who was a beauty guy, so to speak. What do you have to say about that? Am I right?
I think you are, except I think for Benedict the 16th, who is extraordinary, who I believe will be a doctor of the church someday. I may not live to see it, but hopefully I'll be hanging around the outskirts in heaven so I can raise a glass when it happens. That's the sommelier, planning on having wine in heaven. And the thing about Benedict is that beauty and truth really go hand in hand. So the thing about Benedict is that as a theologian, his search for truth was so confident and faith-filled that the way to it, one of the paths he used for truth was beauty, and he trusted in beauty to lead him to truth. He was for me truly he was truly for me an example of how to employ the faith and love of beauty in my work. And I think Benedict, John Paul II, of course, was the Pope when I was aware of being Catholic. And so he's very dear. And I think anybody who knew John Paul II has that same JP2 feeling when you think about him. But Benedict for me was, I used to refer to it as that JP2 got me into the classroom, and Benedict was the grad teacher that made you study for comps. And so I really feel like I owe the way I think about art, the way I work in art, the success I've had working and thinking this way, to the teaching of Pope Benedict.
That's incredible. And that so much resonates with the Endow apostolate, because obviously Endow is about cultivating every woman's unique feminine genius through the prophetic value of reading church documents. And so the fact that Benedict was your teacher, so to speak, in art, not just your feminine vocation, but your personal vocation as an artist, as an art historian, as an educator, all of that kind of emerged from being a student at his feet. So I love that. And I guess I'll just have to pause and ask, was the original intuition of your vocation to art because of John Paul II? That seems to be what you were saying.
No, my original love of art was really just that I really like art. And truth be told, when I was first attracted to art, it was mythology. Now, sort of looking back at it and dissecting it all these years later, I can see that the attraction was storytelling, and particularly mythology, which contains a kind of universal truth within a story. And so it's a gateway drug. I like to think of it that way.
Oh, I love that.
And so the beauty of the artwork, I loved myths, I loved biographies, I loved stories, I loved history. And then this incredible discipline that I was exposed to in my last year of high school, art history brings all of these things together. So like all your favorite things in one happy package, and apparently you could major in it. And so I began work as an art history as major, which ran into a few hiccups because the way that art history was taught and is still taught in many places, and I fear is actually moving into a very problematic area, it's taught as a very secular discipline. So even when you're looking at something religious, you just analyze it in a very dry and sort of lifeless way. And for me, that during my time at University of Chicago it was really turning me off art history. And then I came to the University of Bologna, where there was a sense of context in art. One of the great drivers of the Faculty of Art History in the University of Bologna is understanding the terroir, to use the sommelier term, the unique combination of climate, soil, wind, sun that makes, in the case of wine, the grape, but in the case of the work of art, a work of art. And that application of that particular way of looking at art, once I began work on my thesis topic, which was on Counter-Reformation art in Rome. So, art that is up to here in this is what sacraments are about, this is what the church is about, this is what the faith is about. I mean, there was at this point, it was inescapable that eventually, unless I was like the dumbest person on earth, that I would go, wait, there's a truth here. There's something that makes this art unique. There's something that drives Caravaggio that makes him so exciting. And it turns out, what do you know? It's faith. And so
That's amazing.
that was, and so finding this, but once you find this, then you're very lonely, because all of a sudden you look around in art history and you find out that everyone's like, no, you got that wrong. And then there was JP2. And JP2 had that Sistine Chapel cleaned, and it gave us the possibility to rethink Michelangelo. John Paul II, who went into the Sistine Chapel and wrote poems about it. He gave addresses on it. He propelled this idea of looking into it. And in particular, when we talk about women, he gave us this teaching, this theology of the body. And then he said, look at this art. This art is the sanctuary of it. So this incredible excitement that there might be a place for me and what I was thinking and what I was, and an explanation about how it could be that me, this African American woman from the 20th century, now 21st, I guess, walked into a room that was built for men, by men, 500 years ago. How can it be that I'm so comfortable there? And he gave me the answer. And then Benedict, he gave me the discipline to learn how to understand what I was feeling. So John Paul II opened up this incredible vista. And then Benedict taught me how to think about it, to explain it, to be able to share it with others in an articulate and rational way, to break it out, really to break it open and see the beauty of the truth within. And once I've seen that, now I understand what they talk about. Is someone says to me, well, that's ridiculous. Well, I don't talk that way. Like, how can I not? You've seen this beautiful thing. You want to share it with everybody. So I really feel, I suppose I should say it was a 1-2 punch between JP2 and Benedict.
Well, and with John Paul II, the marriage of the humane, which doesn't exclude maybe what you might have been getting in secular areas where you could take him seriously because he doesn't exclude the humane, but then also the great faith. And I completely resonate with the experience of Benedict teaching you how to understand and teaching you how to think about things, because I would say the same thing for me, not in the art sense of things, but certainly in the theology world and just in human experience. I mean, he's the grand teacher, and maybe we will see him in our lifetime become a doctor of the church, because he's certainly.
I hope so. I want to be there. I hope I'll be there one way or another.
Yeah.
I do have to say the thing you really, and he repeats this over and over and over again in his writings, but that line about beauty wounds, it's true. It's absolutely true. And so his understanding of the danger of beauty is a dangerous thing. And if you see something,
what document are you referring to? So I want to let.
I'm referring to a whole bunch of them. So when in his, I mean, this is a thing he goes into over and over and over and over again. So he started out back when he gave the address at Rimini to Communal Liberazione, the very famous. This is his whole understanding about beauty, and he mentions it twice. How there is the.
And we'll link
that about how beauty creates a healthy shock, right? When he's referencing Plato. Then later on, he has another address as Pope, where he talks about specifically how beauty wounds. He talks about this vulnera, the way beauty can make a chink in your armor. When he talks to artists, he talks about their responsibility of this beauty that is like a dart. I mean, it is a constant in his writings, and even pops up in a few other places where he talks about beauty more laterally. And again, sort of talking about the influence that he had, he explained what happened to me, and he helps me understand when particularly wearing my hat as guide, he helps me to understand what is happening to other people and the different ways that people react to it. But I walked in as an art history major and then an art history grad student without a horse in the race. I can't say that I was an atheist, but I was completely uninterested in the faith aspect. I was completely uninterested in my faith. And I've been raised Catholic, but it said nothing to me. And there I am in this place, and the place is this Sistine Chapel, it's so beautiful. It's so extraordinary that it opened up this little chink in my armor where I didn't want to be asked to change my life. I didn't want to be asked to redirect or think about how I'm living my life. I'm looking at a picture. I don't want to talk about, what I'm doing. And right. that is the danger of beauty. The first was the realization that Michelangelo believes this deeply. What he's painting in that ceiling and in that altar wall, he believes it. That was the realization of that, and kind of realizing if the person you like the most in the world believes it, what's wrong with you? And then understanding, and again, Benedict helps you to understand, what does it mean now that your vulnera, your wound has been infected by beauty? It means that you are aware of the fact that you're supposed to be something, you are supposed to try to achieve this kind of beauty, and that it changes the way you live your life. And I understand why people would be frightened of that. It thoroughly changed my life. It changed my life so thoroughly. I don't think I would recognize the person I was 20 years ago. Although sometimes people are good enough to remind me, and just to keep you humble. But it's a remarkable thing, and I know I'm talking constantly, and I apologize. It's just
it's amazing to hear
argument.
Amazing. So, I want to class, of course. Yeah.
It's just such an interesting topic, and it brings out so many different thoughts and memories. I have a very, very dear friend. We used to both do tours, and we would be in the Sistine Chapel, where you're surrounded, or St. Peter's Basilica, which is it's this. How can you not be amazed? And he used to call them, these people, the nail people. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting there looking at the Last Judgment, and there's this incredible arrangement of these almost 400 bodies that Michelangelo is drawn, and they're lifting up, and here's Christ revealing himself as the ultimate judge. Excuse me, and what's that nail for?
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
It used to drive us. We'd be like, no, really? But what I grew to understand is the nail people, as we call them, is a way that those people are actually very sensitive, I think. They feel that chink in their armor opening.
Yes.
And where most people are just very receptive, they're like, oh, this is beautiful. And they don't really understand. These people know that there's a chink that's open and they want to shut it down by focusing on the trivial, by focusing on I remember another time I was in the Sistine Chapel sitting at the back, and this person, sort of irritated by the amazement of all of his friends, all he could do was make a litany of the things that the church has done that are so horrible. He had to bring ugliness into the room. And so it's interesting. It's very interesting to spend so much time in these places of beauty and watch how it really is dangerous and threatening to many.
Yes, that is unbelievable. And it's, you know, I love your story because in this case, the beauty of the art that you encountered did what it's supposed to do, right? It provoked a deeply human question in you about what is my place in history? What is my unique contribution, with my gift? Is the way that I'm living beautiful, the way that what I'm looking at is beautiful. And so the human heart being, what is that? And I'm a CL person. So the document, the feeling of things, the contemplation of beauty that Benedict gave at the Rimini meeting, which is a communion liberation event, really speaks to me. And this is something we say in CL a lot, sometimes your heart jumps out of your chest and punches you in the face, in which case your story is such a great description of that. When you encountered it. But I think it's also related to, and I have a bajillion questions for you, and I know that we don't have forever to talk, but in terms of his discussion of the relationship between like beauty and eros, because what you're describing is not necessarily eros, but it is that experience of being seized outside of yourself to then question what's happening. So do you want to maybe say something about that?
So Benedict, in particular, when he's discussing when he's talking to artists, he brings up a very important point that has been brought up, by the way, it's been brought up by other thinkers in the world of the sacred and the beautiful. And the problem that art has always had, and the Greeks experienced it too. I think one of the beautiful things about the Greeks is they asked themselves these questions. How is art supposed to get your attention, right? How is art, like, you don't have to look at a work of art, right? No one's going to make you look at a work of art. So the question becomes, how is art going to get your attention? And art has to get your attention by a traditional way of doing it. There's another way you can shock and horrify and disgust people, which apparently is a very popular thing. But how do you get people's attention? One of them is to delight them. One of them is to make them, to draw them through this sense of desire. And so the question becomes how art takes that sense of desire that begins, it's sort of inflamed first by the beauty, by the attractiveness of the art, but then it is to redirect it must redirect that love into something that is greater in heart and higher. So it's a lot like the work of art is a material. It's an object. It's a piece of stone. It's some paint on a wall. It's some paint on a canvas. But that object, that material, that physical, great art moves us beyond that physical, and it points to something greater and more spiritual.
Right. So it becomes a sacramental in a sense, because it's
absolutely.
Yeah. And I really appreciate it. So the other document that we're looking at is which you referenced when he was meeting with artists in 2009 in the Sistine Chapel. And I love how organized the church is. in the sense of like, this is November 21st, 2009. And so Pope Benedict is saying like 25 years ago, or 10 years ago is the anniversary of John Paul II's letter to artists. And 25 years ago, JP2 made Blessed Fra Angelico the patron of artists, who is both holy, the marriage, the perfect harmony, he says, of faith and art. So here's this saint who's also this artist, beautiful. And then he goes, and this is also the anniversary of Pope Paul VI, who, has an address to artists. Exactly. I just love how he just historically just brings us back, puts everything in context. And I really love actually how these three popes have this cohesiveness when it comes to the feminine genius. And I really loved reading this, how there is also this cohesiveness when it comes to the work of artists. And then he quotes Pope Paul VI and says, if we were deprived of your assistance, our ministry would become faltering and uncertain, and a special effort would be needed, one might say, to make it artistic, even prophetic. And then, right, so there's that connection, which you were kind of talking about just a moment ago, with like the objectivity of beauty, that beauty and truth have an essential relationship with each other. And that's what he seems to be talking about here right in the beginning. But then he mentions of this wanting to spring up an authentic Renaissance in art in the context of a new humanism, he says. So can you give us a little bit of what's going on there historically?
So he does have a beautiful sense of building up, even within a tradition of the church. He builds up with a connection between his pontificate, the previous pontificate, the pontificate before that. He also has a sense of the tradition and the long-standing connection between artists and beauty. And I think he is very much trying to draw artists back from a precipice, which they've already gone over, where the late 19th and the early 20th century was all about break with every single tradition. And so I do think that he has a very lovely way, Benedict, of his teaching system is very beautiful, in which he holds up and praises and pleads. But at the same time, he is warning and telling us what happens when when there is a separation between art and faith. And so he says, yes, we need you artists. And I think we can see that, by the way. I think we can see that the loss of the connection between art and the church and faith, it is really a mission that is faltering. It's difficult. We don't have a good way of engaging people visually. We don't have a way of it's much harder to engage people without the use of art. And the fact that we're always falling back on these old images that were produced 300, 400 years ago, they're extremely beautiful, but he is right to be calling for a modern interpretation of the sacred in a way that reflects our own time through the beautiful. And again, he all at the same time, however, reminds artists that they too need the church, that gives them a motive in their art that takes them out of themselves. And as we've seen, a great deal of contemporary art is highly self-referential, and it burns out. So at the same time, artists who are seekers of truth, they're seekers of beauty, he does remind them towards the end there, he waits a while till he gets to it, but he reminds them that if you are looking for something, you are seekers, you are searching, you're dissatisfied. The reason why you are dissatisfied is because you are meant to be more. You are meant to represent something more. You're meant to draw people. You're meant to take on this responsibility of directing the gaze towards something beyond yourselves.
Yeah, and so you can't betray beauty. You can't just kind of sink into what you were saying earlier about kind of like the shock value of modern art. Sure, it might seize somebody out of themselves, but it's not drawing them to any kind of infinite experience or to God. Yeah, I really, really appreciate that. What would you say to, and as you were talking, I was thinking about I used to teach high school, and a former high school student who came into a colleague's classroom, and he was playing Gregorian chant. So this is music and not the visual arts, but he said, "What is this?" And then the teacher said, "Oh, this is Gregorian chant." He goes, "Oh, this is well, this is good. Is this Catholic? And the teacher said, yeah, it's pretty Catholic. And he goes, huh, well, you guys might try playing this at mass. Maybe we take mass more seriously. And, so to your point about, we need not just like you, I mean, yes, we have all these great works of art and history, but where are the Catholic artists now? So what would you say now to someone listening to this podcast who maybe has an artistic vocation, but maybe like has your experience of maybe studying art history, or where there's this complete lack of regard to like the actual historical context of faith inspiring these works of art, or they're an artist themselves that want to participate in arts but can't actually find tutors and teachers to approach it, or it's all about novelty and not so much about the discipline and craft of creating something beautiful?
There's a lot there, and there are about 10 different ideas that are floating around in my head in response to that. I think I'd like to start with your allusion to music, because at the end of the day, Benedict XVI's true affinity was with music, far more than art. As a matter of fact, if I had ever had a chance to really talk to him, I would have asked him if he still felt the same way about Renaissance and Baroque art he did when he wrote Spirit of the Liturgy, where clearly his preference is for Romanesque art and for Gothic art. And that is the art of the age of Gregorian chant. And his love of music, as a matter of fact, he uses that story of listening to, I think it's a Bach piece. He uses it in the Rimini address. I think he uses it again in the general audience in 2009 in Castel Gandolfo. He talks about music as something that really is transporting, and he clearly had a great affinity and love of music is perhaps one of the most privileged ways. And as a matter of fact, even in the letter to artists, he does mention that the Sistine Chapel was a site where some of the greatest musicians composed music and produced music. So music is actually in many ways one of the most privileged directions of all, because in many ways it just bypasses all of this analysis and it transports you. So that is sort of leading into your next question. That is a realm that still has a great deal of possibility if there is patronage. So I'm going to turn your second part of your question a little bit on its side and say, I'm not so sure the problem is the artist getting the right training. I think the problem might be a patronage and people consuming, the consumers of beauty. The consumers of beauty are people who have lost their sense of what they are consuming. And that is something that in every single document that Benedict XVI produced, he talks about the pitfalls of this illusory beauty, a beauty that is not, it actually talks about a two-pronged attack on beauty. And prong number one is a beauty that is superficial, a kind of prettiness, a kind of something that doesn't really lead you out of yourself. It turns you in on yourself and it makes you want to possess it. It brings out a baser form of desire. And many people have succumbed to believing that that is beauty. And as a result, many people who are faithful and would love to, add this transcendental, look at that and think that's the beauty that's on offer, and we don't want anything to do with it. And therefore, authentic beauty, as Benedict says, kind of gets cast by the wayside. The second problem is the idea of truth in ugliness. And this is something that he mentions. As a matter of fact, the beauty of his Rimini talk in 2002 is the way he brackets it with these two ways of speaking of Christ, beautiful beyond measure, and then the man who was spit upon and despised and nothing beautiful about him. And so the second problem is that of ugliness, that there is a growing belief that the only truth can be found in ugliness. And many people believe that too. So the problem with our artist who has dreams and plans and desires isn't isn't the problem with the artist. The artist can get himself some training and get himself some formation. But the problem is that fertile environment, that terroir that I was talking about earlier, it's lacking. It's a dry sand, because the people who are supposed to nourish it, the people who are supposed to consume it, the people who are supposed to put it in their yard and water it and fertilize it, they either think that it's bad because it's superficial, or they think that the only thing that's going to be beautiful or true to them is going to be ugliness. So what we really need is a renaissance in patronage, a renaissance in appreciation of beauty. And I think that's what Benedict was really trying to say to us, that we have to learn to trust beauty again.
Oh my goodness. There's so much of what you said that is unbelievably helpful and rich. And yeah, thank you for that. As you were speaking, I'm thinking of all the people that I've met who just really struggle with believing in beauty. And if we can put our confidence back into it and invest in it, because all the kind of cheap reductionistic forms of so-called beauty, it's just so much easier to digest. I mean, I started this podcast out by telling you I was watching a dumb Netflix rom-com video of Italy, right? Getting my Rome fix, but it takes a true investment and a delay of instant gratification to become the sort of person who can act on the conviction that real beauty is worth investing in, sacrificing for, and suffering for the transformation of self, as well as to support everything that you were just talking about. I mean, I think you made such a profound and exquisite point. How do we do that? How do we, I guess that bleeds into my next question, which is for we have male listeners as well, but this Endow is obviously largely for women. What can we do to become patrons of beauty, to become patrons of the art, when so much of the people around us in our culture, like you said, being cynical, being depressed, despair, this is what's real and true about the world, right? So when he talks in this document about beauty being a conviction of hope, or something that can inspire hope, that ugliness is not the only real thing, that beauty is also true and real, and perhaps even more powerful than ugliness. How do we become the sort of people that live and also lead others to dare to believe in beauty?
So I think one of the most beautiful things I have seen in modern culture, produced recently, was the 3-minute opening cycle of the film Up by Pixar, in which there was no conversation. There were these very nuanced changes in color, this very simple music that chronicle a couple's life, the hopes, the dreams, the disappointments, the time that passes. And by the time it comes to a close, 3 minutes later, you know you have seen something that is fulfilling and true and beautiful. It can be done. I think holding on to things like that, not getting... the ugly is very seductive. And, if we're all going to sit around together, and when we're sitting around as a group and we want to talk about the latest thing we've seen, right? Because the way we talk about our aesthetic experiences now is what we have seen. If what we're going to talk about is, I have seen White Lotus or Game of Thrones or this, I mean, there's a lot of bitterness out there, and we consume it all the time, and we think it doesn't hurt us. And first of all, I would take a big step back from that kind of stuff. Stop creating a demand for it, and stop giving it a place to fester by being, something that can enter into our daily consumption. Even people who don't watch those things end up sort of hearing about them or creating a sort of curiosity in the demand. The second thing is, what is beautiful is hope. Whether or not we're doing it with a work of art, we can always start with ourselves and with our lives. And so to project hope and to look around and see places where we find hope, things that give us a sense of hope, gratefulness, gratitude. This is where we start. I am always suggesting, I think I just wrote a piece for Angelus News this month as a New Year's resolution, buy some art. Right? Everybody buys, stuff to put on their walls, but it always ends up being pictures of oneself or something neutral or something, designed so it will just sort of go with the tone of the decor with no real image. Buy some art, take some time, look up some artists. I wrote a whole article introducing a whole bunch of artists. Go look it up. Find an artist and commission something and talk about it and say, I found this wonderful thing. That's how things get started. That's why people buy things. That's how the whole advertising world works. People get excited about something, they talk about it, other people want to see it and they want to have it too. Why is it that only the bad guys with their bad message get advertising and we can't be bothered to advertise the beauty of what we believe?
Right. So I'm not going to step on your point. That's absolutely right. And how do, let's say someone's listening and goes, well, I don't want to have that cheesy cliche thing I bought at Marshall's on my wall. I want to have some amazing,
and preferably not, let's not have the slogans either. I'm getting really, I was just in the US and everything has like a slogan on it. Be happy, be positive. Oh, for heaven's sakes.
I know, it's so bad. I hate it. I just hate it. There's so many things that annoy me, but that's one of them. But what if they have never really taken the art seriously? So where do you begin? We can begin with your website, right? We can begin with your website, with your blog. Where should they start?
There's a Catholic directory out there of artists. There's a directory of Catholic artists. Let's say you want to get someone a special gift, right? You want to get someone a special gift for a birthday, an anniversary. Just take a look. Take a look at what's out there. There's a directory of Catholic artists put together by Gwyneth Thompson Briggs, where you see a number of different type of artists. You can start looking and seeing, just see if you like anything. And if you like something like that, well, just put that up, then put up images and you'll see other images that come that look like it, what you might like. And there's actually, again, if I could find it, I would post it up on in the chat for you. But I tried to write this piece in such a way that if you are looking for something a little edgier, if you're looking for something more traditional,
I
love icons, just try looking at these people. Think about, if you want to be part of a Renaissance, then one of the ways to do it is to become a patron, and not a patron. This doesn't require something enormous. There are a lot of artists out there. What means something to you? Buying something just to buy it doesn't make any sense. But if there's a saint to whom you have a particular devotion and you see a beautiful work that really evokes what you love about that saint, if there's an idea, if you want to read, I put some up there. I found some really beautiful still lifes that were kind of Eucharistic, but not too much. It was sort of fish plate, chalice, very, very beautiful. I was thinking, what a lovely thing to have, right? It would be like a lovely little dining room decoration. It's not overly, look at me, we're talking about the Blessed Sacrament, but it's there to be able to talk about, oh, what is this? Oh, well, I had this done, and the fish, it's the ichthys. It's a way for people love to talk about their stuff. People ask about stuff. They ask about images. Oh, who's this in the picture? So I would say that if people are able to, then that's a material way to start working towards a Renaissance. Otherwise, talk about beautiful things. Don't get bogged down. Just avoid this illusory prettiness, this faux beauty, and look towards truth. The stories and the people and the examples and the events that are uplifting, because that's what we're supposed to be doing.
So on that note, as we wrap up this episode, what is it's an impossible question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your favorite piece of art, Liz?
It is an impossible question. I'm looking around my study right now, and at this particular moment, I'm sort of vaguely obsessed with Jan van Eyck, whose work I think is very beautiful. I have the Caravaggio Doubting Thomas up because I never get tired of Caravaggio, and that painting always really resonates with me. The artist Barocci. I have a detail of one of his works. I have a drawing by Michelangelo. I have a work that I bought at an art auction, which is just a kind of crazy little, it's like a little bunch of figures at the bottom showing cavalry, which I'm very fond of. So I like a lot of different things, and it's the joy of art for me. I like so many things. I love to go in museums and say, oh, there you are, my old friend. And it's like having friends. Who's your favorite friend? And I love that there is a world where we can just all be friends. To me, it's a foretaste of heaven, where you don't have to choose who you hang around with, because you're all part of one great, big, beautiful reality.
I feel that way about art, and I feel that way about books, especially once I got over the fact that I wouldn't be able to read all of them. Then it became sacramental to me, where I thought, there is a place, there is a kingdom where we'll fulfill this desire in my heart to know all the beautiful, true, and good things. And it won't be in this life, but it'll be in the next one. Liz, thank you so much for this interview. And I hope that it is truly just a provocation for anyone listening to pick up these documents by Pope Benedict and to cultivate true beauty and true art in their life. Any closing thoughts before we say goodbye?
I am really always very happy to talk about art because, in the words of Peter, it gives me a chance to give a reason for the hope that is inside me. And that's really what we're called to do.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.